I said in my first video that I would do a follow-up talking about how I discovered that I had cancer. So, at the time I was diagnosed, about halfway into being 34, and I had moved back from St. Paul, Minnesota. I had lived in the seminaries, both dorms, and then moved into their apartments, and all of their buildings, frankly, were mold infested, had all sorts of pest issues and other problems. So I dealt with that for maybe 6 to 7 years. Now usually, and this is what I thought might have happened, was I had just a bad fungus infection. I took on the job at APAC in my last 2 years in Minnesota full-time, and working 60-hour weeks, like I said, long hours, tutoring on the side, and so high stress. Living in a building, too, that not only did the seminary sell, they actually sold it to a group that started renovating the building while I was living in it. And usually they're supposed to section off the building. Well, they were doing it through my wall in the apartment building next door. The problem is the building has a stairway in the center of the building that's outside. Wonderful for Minnesota. And the living quarters are adjacent to that stairwell. So if you go to the next building over that's attached to that building, it's literally through my wall. It's not like through my wall across the stairway. It's through the wall. So they're tearing out the drywall. They're tearing out all this stuff. And, same thing above me. Kicking a bunch of that stuff into the air that's come about because the building not only it's about 30 years old or so, was built for, I swear, Arizona or California. Flat roofs, which did not have a good way to empty out snow or ice that accumulated. So when I lived on the third floor at one point with two other roommates, the one roommate had leaking in his ceiling they just didn't fix. He had buckets set up, So you imagine that happening in the entire building consistently, and my apartment was actually one below that one. So I knew it was in the walls. I could see, water damage above my closet in my bedroom. And so because of that water damage I chose specifically, my books are my biggest investment. I'm not putting them in the bedroom or even in the back study area, spare bedroom. I'm going to move that into the living room. So my living room doubled as a library in my study area. So, but anyway, I moved home, and at the time, high-stress job, I stress ate like crazy. I mean, I was 320 pounds. I was big. Started dating someone, and she wasn't the smallest either, and I think she kind of recognized we need to get in shape. I don't want to date someone, who has a lot of health problems in their family, which mine does. Heart and diabetes are on both sides of my family, so taking care of myself was probably a good idea, especially since I was in my early 30s. And so I dropped the stress of the job, came home, couldn't find a job. So you're talking about 6 months to a year where I am filling out applications left and right, online, in person, etc. And every interview I got was commission-only sales. And part of the problem was I already had a master's degree working on a second master's degree. I had 2 science undergrads, and I had an associate degree. I was basically too educated and or too experienced for general jobs like, say, retail or whatnot. Now, I might be able to get a job at Barnes & Noble, but at the time they weren't hiring. And so a lot of the jobs that I could get just weren't here. And the Peoria area has been depressed for a very long time. So this time I'm like, okay, well, I need to get health insurance. So I tried, and I failed. Because of Obamacare, I have to go through the state due to my income. Now, most people think Medicaid's a great thing. Well, it is, but in Illinois there's a weird rule. You have to start in the county you're in. Let's say I call in, which I did, right? You call in and they give you 2 counties to start your thing in. Cook County, which is in Chicago, and Springfield. Well, Cook County can go to hell. I don't want to deal with Chicago. Downstate people never do. And so I figured, okay, Springfield's closer, not Chicago, I'll start there. Well, then they want proof of income. I can't get the fax numbers they give me to work to give them my proof of income, so it's denied. I do it again later on the next year, trying again, and denied again for the same reason. And finally, at this point, about 6 months into being home, maybe 6 months to 8 months, I had joined a gym, Planet Fitness. I had watched what I was eating. I lost about 30 pounds, about 290 at this point. But then I started having a problem. I started coughing a lot. And I would cough so hard I'd throw up. Now, at the time, I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I still didn't have insurance, and at one point I thought maybe it was just a really bad, bacterial infection. So I got a Z-Pack, and I went in for a physical too, on my own dime. All of this is on my own dime at this point, because I don't have Medicaid yet. So finally, I know I'm getting sicker, and I think, because Prilosec helped. Prilosec actually helped for about 2 or 3 months. And because of throwing up and not being able to eat a lot, not having an appetite, I probably lost another 30 pounds. So right about now I'm about 260, 263. My target goal when I get really healthy is 220 to 200. Mostly muscle, So I started going back to the gym today for the first time in like 3 months to try and get, my muscles not atrophied and whatnot, and to basically help the chemo operate. So now that I actually can. There's reasons I couldn't for a while. But I coughed probably for a year. I've been throwing up for about at least 8 months. And the Prilosec helped. So I'm thinking it's a stomach thing. So I finally get my Medicaid, and I go into Unity Point Methodist and deal with the biggest quack ever. He basically touches my right side, and he asks me, do I have a history of gallbladder issues? No, I do. My mom had her gallbladder taken out. She has a history of gallstones in her family. But he pushed to my right side, and I didn't feel anything, so I said, okay, well, it's not gallstones. Prilosec is working, keep taking that. The problem is, Prilosec stopped working about a week or two after that. And that's all he suggested. Now, when I first saw the one doctor, he had suggested a chest x-ray. This doctor did not seem to take that advice into consideration at all. So I tried to take 2 Prilosec. I had a student in my class that was a nurse at one point, and he said, hey, you can take 2, if you're worried about the dosage, just, make sure that if it still doesn't get better, you see someone. And so I did, and then finally, I had a gastroenterology appointment for a month ahead of time. Yeah, by the way, if you're ever worried about us becoming like England and having like these health insurance things that are way far out there, health appointments, we're already there. It's done. We're already there. So, finally, 24th of December, or 23rd, I get a chill. My hands turn gray. I'm just very cold. And I eat food and I'm fine. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's just a little blood sugar or something. Finally, the 2nd of January, I did dry heaving before I went to go see a friend for dinner. And I was already craving certain types of food, which were healthy. Like, there's a difference between craving like sweets, which I used to do a lot, but then craving healthy food. Because craving healthy food is weird for me. Normally I was listening to the stress. This time I'm listening to my body, and it's like, okay, I need these. And finally, I'm with my buddy. He's talking to me, and I'm just going, I don't feel right. So I called my dad. He took me to the ER. After 5.5 hours of waiting in the ER on the 2nd, which I believe was a Sunday or Monday night, I get my chest x-ray, and he says, you are not leaving this hospital. My whole left lung was white, meaning no oxygen was getting into it. My right lung had something at the top that was pushing up into the clavicle and the muscle here, and they noticed some spots on the sternum, a spot on my right adrenal gland, and a spot on my liver. So they do a CT scan. They notice that there are masses and there are things. Then I get a PT scan, or a PET scan, right, where they inject you with something to see what's active. Now, at the time, I also get a bronchoscopy. This is Friday. So I'm in the hospital for about a week. And early on, something that's low on the list is cancer. There's a bunch of other things it could be. So I'm not thinking much of it because I don't smoke. I smoke a cigar or two once every 6 months to a year, right? And usually when I'm with other people and I'm outside and we're talking, having a beer, just, usually talk theology or something like that, right? We're close friends of mine. We enjoy a good day and we enjoy good cigars. So, I understand you can get lung cancer without smoking, but I really wasn't thinking that. I'm thinking, again, fungal infection or something is causing this. And they said, well, here's the problem with that. Fungal infections only affect people who are unhealthy. So they were like, do you have HIV? And I'm like, dead people have more of a sex life than I do, so it's probably not HIV, which it wasn't. It turns out that after this, the pulmonologist had said, I want you to, or I want interventional radiology to do another thing on you. Well, they didn't do it at the same time, which she wanted. I had to go another time a week later. And this starts with the 5 to 6 week waiting period of just more tests, because it's always, oh, here's a test, wait a week for the results, oh, by the way, here's another test next week. And so they did a thing on the center mass and found out that it was lymphoma, non-Hodgkins. Now at the time, a week in the hospital, I thought it was lung cancer, because that's what they all thought. And if it's in multiple organs with lung cancer, I'm dead. I mean, that's stage 4. So for about a week, I literally was between, am I going to wait for the good news that it's not lung cancer, or am I going to start the mourning process? Because, you know, I didn't want to die. I still don't want to die. It led me to process things a little differently. I mean, I still started mourning a little bit. I talked to a close friend of mine the day Dad was not at the hospital with me. And he kind of talked me down a little bit. We talked about some other stuff that was more positive, and came back that it was not lung cancer, which is part of the reason I think why I can be as positive as I am with this, that it's much more treatable than the death sentence of stage 4, you know, and whatnot. Even though I was probably in stage 3 or 4 with lymphoma. Turned out that the liver spot was benign. The adrenal gland was kind of active. They're still not sure about that one. And then there was a tumor blocking off the left lung. There was possibly some pneumonia at the bottom. I think now it's still lymphoma at the bottom of the left lung. There were 7 spots up here on the left lung. And then there were something in the right lung pushing up. And then there was 1 to 2 center masses. And the center mass was like, at the time, 9.9 by 3.5 centimeters. I mean, it's big. But before I had my treatment, my first treatment, it was so large it was going out beyond my pectoral muscle. And it was pulling the nerves in my back, so to the point where my arms hurt to lift up, and the only solution I could find for the pain was to literally hunch over. So, a few things that helped me through the pain. I did use some Vicodin to kind of dull the pain. I tried to avoid using it for a few reasons. One was constipation, and, you know, just frankly, if you're ever on surgery, make sure you have a lot of water and understand your drugs. They had me on an antifungal, still do, because they're not sure if it is a fungal infection or if there's one in there, and I got one that gives you hallucinations. So I had to pull back on the dosage because I was seeing Steamboat Willie characters when I closed my eyes. You know, I couldn't see in the dark. I only just recently started driving again in day and night, and so there's that. Anyway, I started the RCHOP. My 3rd treatment is in about a week or 2. I have 3 more after that, so hopefully this goes well. The first one, they shrunk dramatically, and I had a lot of support from both family, my parents, my cousin. My best friend is going to come from New York on her spring break to visit me for about a week and probably stay with me for that day when I get my treatment. And then my priest was also there quite a bit, even though he was gone in Jerusalem for a few weeks. When I was finding a lot of this out, he was there in the hospital at the beginning. He was there the first day of treatment. You know, he's been a really good, you know, person to talk to. So anyway, with that being said, that was my non-Hodgkins, large diffuse B cell, so it's one of the more treatable ones. I hope it goes well and I don't have any complications. I've so far avoided complications. I've avoided getting the port. I've been told you can't radiate around the area, and the port would go right here, roughly around where the center masses are. And so, also, even though the drug is hard on the veins, I've got some red marks from the thrombosis from it. It does heal, and the nurses are not only usually really good, you can also see the necrosis from the A drug, the Red Devil, if it gets out of the veins. So, they're doing really good. Hopefully the 3rd one will go well. Hopefully I don't need L6, and I probably will, and some radiation, but hopefully it all goes well. And with that, I'll tell a little bit more about my faith journey within this, because it's come around a bit more than this, but as far as I know, this is kind of how I discovered it. If you ever have a cough more than a month, get a lung x-ray or chest x-ray. I've told my students this too. It's going to be a new health thing because we just never check for lymphoma. So with that, I leave you.